Do you think the difficulties facing the youth of Baltimore City are worse than you faced? And if not, what are we doing wrong?
Well, I think the difficulties that I faced are similar to the ones that they faced, but there was a big difference, quite frankly, when I was a kid, and that is there was a much greater sense of community. And it wasn't unusual when I was a kid, if you were doing something wrong, for some adult to come and correct you. And they don't do that much anymore. They're afraid, or they think they might get sued, or they think they might get shot, or all kinds of things happen. And consequently, as a society, we're not paying as much attention to other people's kids, and I think we're starting to see some of the results of that. And, you know, I think part of that is a leadership issue, because I think we have to recognize that we're all in the same boat. And if part of the boat sinks, eventually the rest of it's going down too. And we've got to become much more interested in each other and in each other's kids, because there is no society that can survive when it's divided against itself.
Interesting. Would you comment on the negative publicity Bill Cosby has received for trying to motivate parents to take responsibility for their children? And there was another question I saw earlier that's in there, a lot of Bill Cosby questions, I just picked this one. And if people know if you ever met him, what are your thoughts on this entire controversy?
Sure. Well, you know, the first time I met Bill Cosby was over the telephone. He called me because he had seen a talk that I gave on C-SPAN.
Speak of the devil.
And he said, wow, I am absolutely blown away by what you're saying, because it's all the truth. You know, basically, there are those who wish to criticize him for pointing out some pretty obvious defects in the system, because we live in a politically correct society where you're not supposed to criticize people, and certainly certain people especially cannot be criticized, and he's decided to criticize some of those people. Well, you know, I just say it's time to grow up and recognize that we all have deficits and we all have areas where we can improve. That includes the African American community. Have they been persecuted and prosecuted and electrocuted and whatever cuted you want to? Yes, absolutely, those things have happened. Does that give you carte blanche to do whatever you want? Absolutely not. Does it remove the responsibility to provide the appropriate guidance for our young people? Absolutely not. But not only that, but there's a larger picture here. People who are not in the African American community need to recognize that for every one of those young people that we can keep from going astray, going down that path of self-destruction, it's one less person you have to be afraid of. One less person you have to protect your family from. One less person you have to pay for in the penal system or the welfare system. One more tax-paying, productive member of society who may discover a new energy source or the cure for AIDS. We cannot afford to throw any of them away.
There are a lot of questions like this, and it's a follow-up really on what you were just talking about. There were a number of questions asking things like, what ideas do you have for creating good male role models for our young black inner city children? And a lot of questions just talking about, what do you think a place like Baltimore should do? What do you do beyond inspiring people to begin to turn it around for large groups of kids?
Yeah, well, like I said, I have a program at the hospital. We bring in 800 students at a time, but I'm only one person. Actually, as I told you before when we were in the back, if I had my druthers, I'd be in a different school somewhere in this country every day, because you know we have so much work to do. But You don't have to be black, interestingly enough. You know? Let me tell you. You think about, there is a crisis with the young black males. There are more young black males in college. In prison than there are in college. Homicide rates for young black males in our major cities, astronomical. It's a crisis. There's no question about it. And the images that they see, the rap singers, the basketball players, these are the images that are held up. You look at the major black media, Jet and Ebony. What's on the front every single time? Sports and entertainment. It's like, don't have anybody else. What about people like Shirley Jackson? Black female. First black female to receive a PhD from MIT. The president of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute was the first female to be chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, president of the AAAS, the largest scientific organization in the world. And there are many who have accomplished intellectual things. Those people aren't talked about. So those young people don't see them. And what about the history? Anybody could take that young black boy by the hand, 6-year-old, and walk down the streets of Baltimore, and they could give him a black history lesson that would thrill his heart and make him know that his ancestors played a great role in the development of this country. They could start by pointing to his shoes and say, it was Jan Matzliger, a black man, who invented the automatic shoe lasting machine, which revolutionized the shoe industry throughout the world. And you walk on that clean street and you can talk about Charles Brooks, a black man who invented the street sweeper, those machines with the big brushes that clean the streets. And down that street comes a big refrigerated tractor-trailer truck. And you can tell them that it was Frederick Jones, a black man, who invented the refrigeration system for trucks, later applied for airplanes and trains. And it comes to a stop at the red light. You tell them it was Garrett Morgan, a black man, who invented the traffic signal. And while you're talking about him, you can tell how he invented the gas mask, saved lots of lives during the war. And while you're talking about the war, Henrietta Bradbury, a black woman who invented the underwater cannon and made it possible to launch torpedoes from submarines. And you'll see a beautiful black woman walking down the street. A black man did not invent her, but you can use this opportunity to talk about Madam C.J. Walker, a black woman who invented cosmetic products for women of dark complexion, was the first woman of any nationality in the United States to become a millionaire on her own efforts. And you'll walk past the hospital and you'll talk about Charles Drew and his contributions to blood banking, understanding the function of blood plasma. Daniel Hale Williams, the first successful open heart surgery in the world, had an operative mortality rate of only 1.5%, less than many cardiothoracic surgeons today. You look up at the surgical lights. Thomas Edison. You didn't know he was black, did you?
and let a rap singer put that in there somewhere.
Well, he wasn't, but his right-hand man, Lewis Latimer, was. You can tell how Lewis Latimer came up with the filament that made the light bulb work for more than 2 or 3 days, how he invented the electric lamp, incandescent lighting, diagrammed the telephone for Alexander Graham Bell, was a tremendous inventor in his own right. Hardly anybody knows who he is. He walked across the railroad tracks. Andrew Beard, the automatic railroad car coupler, spurred on the Industrial Revolution. Elijah McCoy, the automatic lubrication system for locomotive engines. In fact, he had so many inventions, something new would come out. People would say, is that a McCoy? Is that the real McCoy? You got racist people like David Duke talking about the real McCoy, don't even know who they're paying homage to. So, you know. So you can see that young man never had a reason to believe that his ancestors didn't play a big role in the development of this country. And you don't have to be a black person to give him that history lesson, because we're all in this together. But the interesting thing is, I can take that same walk down the street for virtually any nationality in this country, and I can point out tremendous contributions that were made, and that's how the United States of America became the pinnacle nation in the world, faster than any other nation has ever reached the pinnacle. There is something special about us, and that's why we're the United States. So we need to keep that in mind, and we need to make it clear to all of our young people, because when we work together, we can do virtually anything.